If.
Good.
Good, how are you?
Ready? Are we still waiting? Okay, we're good, go, okay. Then I will go ahead and call the pre-meeting of the planning commission to order at 3:34 on September 4th, 2024. In the city council conference room. And we will begin first with a discussion on food trucks, and then maybe we could wrap up about 10 after. Should get started.
Okay, we'll do either way at 10 after. We'll be ready to start.
We'll move on to something else.
Yeah. Okay, well, welcome. Thank you for letting me be here today and present this to you. Last month, as a reminder, we presented a ordinance adjustment for some food truck regulations, primarily around hours of operation and signage. And that prompted a desire from the planning commission to know a little bit more about food trucks. And so I passed a few documents. I'm gonna not cover every word that's in this first document. This is me putting my thoughts together so I can streamline that down into a more coherent presentation. I give you a copy for your review later, and I can also provide a digital copy here as well. This is the one that says have the Orem City logo. And I did want to recognize Emma Tenney. She presented last month. She helped me with some of this research too, to make sure that she feels appreciated in her work, and we'll thank her for that. But she's enjoying her honeymoon right now, so she's not with us.
I was a little late. Can I get this document so we talk about?
Yes. The other documents I will discuss momentarily. So I could see any one of them.
Like on the shit.
Yeah.
Here, with the Orem logo, what do you have in there right now?
What was he missing?
The zoning practice. I thought I had enough, but I don't.
I can get one.
It's okay, so we'll just move forward. Feel free to ask questions. There's a brief history of the food truck. Going way back to, at least in the United States, pre-United States, 1691, when New York City passed food cart ordinances. Couldn't find that original language, but it was asserted that happened. Chuck wagons invented in the 1860s. Horse-drawn dining carts where you actually could dine inside. There was a picture of one. He made the postage stamp there in the 1890s. Moving into what we're familiar with our childhood probably is ice cream trucks. Trucks at construction sites. I remember some of those in the 80s when I was younger. And then I just thought this was interesting. The first taco truck was opened out of an old ice cream truck in 1974, and it's now a multi-million-dollar chain. So King's Tacos, I'm gonna have to try them in Los Angeles. More recently, I mentioned last that Great Recession about 2009, 2010 prompted a whole explosion in the food truck industry. Many people who lost jobs or were dissatisfied in their work turned to food trucks as a opportunity for probably as many reasons as there are food trucks. So, but some of the general themes is just, you know, a more satisfying work endeavor, entrepreneurism, economic freedom, not being slave to a certain schedule. In 2013, Orem City passed what we currently have. There's been a couple of amendments in the city ordinance, and I have that on the next slide. 2014, even our Sierra Center started hosting some food truck rallies. I'm not sure if they do that today, but one of our local favorites, Waffle Love, was even highlighted on food truck, the Great Food Truck Race. And then 2023, 2015, the Utah Food Truck League is established. I mentioned them because they've become a pretty prominent voice in the state legislative efforts over the last 10 years. And then Orem Farmer Market began their Food Fest Wednesdays at the City Center Park beginning last year in May, which is primarily food trucks and other food vendors and artisans. And then as of 2024, I don't know exactly how many are licensed throughout the state, but I did find this directory of 335 vendors that are associated with the food truck league, and that's statewide, of course. But so there is a substantial presence in Utah. I'm sure that number is higher. Our current ordinance, I'm just gonna read it verbatim. A mobile vendor may only be a food vendor, so I think that's an important distinction where we're not talking about. Say a locksmith, or a handyman. That drives around a lawn mowing service, so our ordinance specifically talks about food vendors. Must have all required licensing from the Utah County Health Department. All equipment related to food preparation must be in a self-contained unit such as the vehicle itself or attached trailer. An operating mobile vendor may not interfere with vehicular or pedestrian circulation. A mobile vendor may not be parked longer than 5 hours at any one location or within 500 feet of said location per day. Property owner approval is required. A mobile vendor may not park on any public street located within 1,000 feet of Orem Fest celebrations, essentially. That says an engine. So that's where we stand today. State law, though, has evolved since that ordinance was originally passed. There is an appendice in here with the 3 different versions of our ordinance. One's a very minor tweak, just changing Orem Fest from Summerfest to Orem Fest, but state regulations have been amended at least 3 times since 2015 on this topic, and most recently in 2023 went into effect last May 2023. This is a summary. There's a copy of the statute in, I believe, one of the appendices in this first document. But essentially, mobile businesses, they must obtain a business license unless they have already had a valid license from another Utah municipality. So they call this reciprocity in the state law. A business license has to be recognized unless they also lack the proper health and fire safety permits, which are also required. Zoning, we cannot prohibit a mobile business in zones where food establishments are permitted. And food trucks cannot be banned based off distance requirements. Now, this is a summary, so nuances of the actual language could adjust that, but again, I mentioned the health department, fire safety inspections must be present to be valid or a valid operator. We're not allowed to require them to pay fees or obtain special permits for events on private property, whether it's a public or private event. I found this interesting. If it's a mass gathering, I'm guessing like a county fair or a Summerfest, they can stay stationary for up to 5 days. Orem Fest, provided they meet sanitation and vendor regulations. And this was one that where the most nuance might come into it, especially if we crafted regulations, like how does this affect regulations we make? If a mobile business has the consent of the private property owner, a political subdivision cannot limit the number of days they can operate on that property. Now, I don't think, and I want to review the code before I say for certain again, that wouldn't say that they don't have to leave at the end of the day. But we can't say, oh, you can only operate on a certain site for 2 days a week. They can be there 7 days a week, 365 days a year. However, I think we could still require them to leave at the end of each of those days. We can ask for proof of property owner's permission. We can't to provide or keep a property owner's written consent on file. Sort of interesting thing the state put in there. And we can't require a site plan for operations if the business operates at the same location for less than 10 hours per week. Few constraints. We did some surveying, mostly on Center Street, State Street. We did not get over Geneva Road, although I was told there is one out there. And Emma did measure on Google Maps her distance between these trucks and businesses, and we can see that they average 250 to 450 feet from local restaurants. You can see a few big clusters, and that's where some of our interesting stories, Becca will attest, come out of. And although those might be self-resolving, that's a whole other. But the problem or taking control and of the situation. This is that some segments, line in the middle of State Street. I was having trouble with my GIS to blow up that, so line in the middle of State Street. I threw on the zoning just so you sort of could see zoning context, although zoning is not a factor in for regulations. This one is located at 1600 North. Actually, the rider is sort of a rented truck that they sell frozen meat out of. I suppose it counts. It's not your typical food truck. Technically, it is a food selling food. We included them in the. I would guess this is sort of like a temporary. They're not around all year long type of thing, but who knows? This one on the left side of the screen is one that is continually there. And that is one of the reasons that we've had some enforcement disparity. You can see on this one on the south or on the bottom right is how they've set up these shade structures. And these are sort of permanently set up. They're not like just taken down at the end of the day. Now permanently maybe 3 days, 7 days, a month, I don't know. Okay, we have this one that's just spread all over this with lots of shade structures, lots of seating, signage, operate in front of this old house. It's probably been commercially used for ages, but these are pictures of the same place, just different.
Pawn shop on it.
What?
Yes, it was.
The pawn shop.
So this is the same, both pictures the same place, just different angles so you can see how it's wrapped around. Our ordinances don't really discuss or give parameters around setting up shade structures and seating and picnic benches. That's just not really mentioned or discussed. This is another grouping. This is about 5 or 6 trucks.
I just had a question,
Yeah.
Lassie, you said like in our code, it's not currently there, is it not discussed in other cities' codes either?
I have to go review Emma's research on her spreadsheet.
Okay.
I can say affirmatively, but I'll write that question down.
No, just, is
Yeah.
it something people are trying to regulate or just generally something that people don't?
Well, you would think that if they have to, if they're actually abiding the no overnight thing, they pack up their stuff and bring it with them. However, I could see a situation where they're leaving all that stuff and moving the truck.
Kind of, yeah,
Another situation that we really don't address in here is, well, we do have zoning setbacks and other type of structure provisions. We have one particular business right across from the mall that had one of these structures up permanently and it was actually associated with a brick and mortar restaurant, and that was eventually removed because it violated building setbacks, and the way they had it set up was as a permanent almost addition to their structure. So these shade structures do get into some enforcement issues with setbacks and lot coverage and parking, whether they're covering required parking. So they all are relevant, they're just not explicitly addressed as this is how we deal with shade structures and seating. This has been a long-standing, I think it's actually a new vendor, and I'm not sure if they're still here today, but this was just last Thursday. But this has been a permanent, ongoing, sort of semi-permanent structure and seating arrangement set up in this location for a long time. This is the old Winter Farms property. This is down on South State Street, a little less permanent, but you can see how they're just sort of closed up for the day and there's seating out there. So that's sort of the current situation as far as our ordinance, what we're seeing out in the field, and sort of the maybe some of the gaps that we have with uniform enforcement. Now, when I say enforcement, a lot of these issues came out because of our the proactive efforts of our business licensing division, trying to ensure all these food trucks had the requisite health, safety, and business licenses. We don't typically enforce unless again, another agency within the city brings something to our attention, or a consumer or a citizen actually gives us a phone call and says, hey, we're having a problem. So these issues were not issues that Development Services Department per se was identifying, bringing to the table, but since they were a partner in all this stuff, this is why it's coming for us. So I just say that we don't have citizens calling on a regular basis as far as I know about any of these issues. The rest of this discussion is just sort of, I don't want my slides out of order. Some of the policy questions, I suppose, that we can pose when we discuss food trucks. It's very easy to sort of just say black or white thinking on these things, and yes, it's all good or all bad. A lot of the sources that are out there are actually pretty pro food truck, less regulations. Even the more neutral ones still err on sort of the side of, hey, that's how we make this work, right? So I have tried to come up with some counterpoints. So, so we can sort of look at both sides of these issues. Some of these I've printed for you. Zoning practice comes from the American Planning Association. It's a little bit older, it's a little outdated, there's still some good information in that one, as well as their quick notes publication. The APA is a bit more neutral. However, you can slowly see the bias come out as far as certain takes on issues. The one that I printed out is called Food Truck Truth. Just the title alone suggests that there's probably a little bit of a certain paradigm in that one. I only printed that one out for you because they actually did use data in their analysis that they've collected. And I'll talk a little bit more about that data as far as the impact on restaurants, because that was a question that came up last month. Yeah. I don't.
I have an extra one of the zoning, but I'm missing that.
Yeah, I asked for printouts, so I'll get you ones that didn't print out. I thought I got enough copies, but it looks like a couple of these.
I need that one. Got an extra one in case if someone's missing.
Oh, and it might user error, collation problems. But
You were talking and sorting at the same time. I totally get it.
See, I can't do it. I'm having to. These resources are also in the bibliography that's assembled with this, as well as, the web links that if you want a digital copy, you can just click on. So because the Food Truck Truth did have more data behind it, that's why I included more methodology to their findings. However, it is produced by the Institute for Justice, which is a little bit more on the right wing. And it's a Washington DC think tank, run by lawyers, and they're fairly reputable though. They have done 12 Supreme Court cases, so I suppose does that give them more reputation here? I don't know. But again, it's just another perspective on that issue. I did not print off the Libertas one. I think it makes some good arguments and stuff, but you can tell it's just the way that they approach it is very like on a libertarian side, way over here as far as how they approach land use issues. But it's available online too, and it's interesting to read. All right, this one. So there are regulatory challenges, and that sort of was what brought this up. It is helpful if we identify where we have ambiguity in our codes, or where state code creates ambiguity or conflict in our code. And so it'd be helpful for us to resolve that through some type of ordinance amendment. The more clarity we can get, even if it's just pointing back to state code sometimes, that is helpful for business owners and food truck owners to know what's really happening, as well as employees trying to administer and enforce provisions. So a lot of times as we go through the tables that are in the appendix here, Now, this table normally just focuses on hours of operation. I think Emma's bigger spreadsheet tried to capture additional food truck related issues, and I can share that digitally. But there, there's just a whole wide range of how cities address this, and so it gets confusing when when an operator is going from, say, even just Linden to Orem, and everything's just a lot more vague. And so the more we can maybe have regulations reflect clearly what state code is requiring of the city. Also, and then identifying specifically what gaps exist in our code which cause confusion and delay, right? Whether that's through enforcement or just, again, like what do we do with shade structures? Well, I could apply the zoning code and all these things, but maybe that's really not the outcome we want. Maybe we do want to make some exceptions. And so as we talk about clarity, find out what's important, what should be addressed, and then just really focusing on those outcomes we want to produce. Looks like I have a lot of the complaints from the food truck industry is again seeming like, you just sort of hold these standards out of a hat at random. Whatever felt good in the moment of the meeting. And we can see there's that broad range, even just focusing on timeframes. Well, why should we have it closed overnight? Most cities do. Well, is that the reason why we did it? Is that a good reason to do it just because everyone else is doing that? What outcome are we trying to produce? And the more we can define the outcome that we're trying to address or resolve, and we can point to that, then better everyone is off. Not just, well, what are other cities doing? Because they might not even know why they're doing it. Most cities do have some type of, going back to the hours issues, yeah, they have some type of no overnight provision. Sometimes it's 2 hours, sometimes it's 6 hours. But again, the outcome is they actually want these places to move and be and remain mobile, not turn into semi-permanent fixtures. And so that's the outcome to focus on. One of the big things that come up in all the literature is restaurant protectionism. And is that a valid exercise of government power? Now, Libertas and this for Justice will say absolutely not. Not a legitimate use of government power. Counterpoints to that argument is, well, we have long-standing businesses that pay property tax. They have more invested in getting into a building. They have more stability as far as employees and wages that are paid. And so those are some of the counterpoints that say, yeah, maybe there is a government interest in protectionism of a certain industry. This comes back to the study that's in the truth, I'll put that in air quotes, truth and food trucks memo. Their basic findings was that a 12-year nationwide study, they found that an increase in food trucks of 1 year does not lead to fewer restaurants in the following. The number of food trucks is positively and simply related to the number of restaurants in the same year. And for every additional food truck, there are approximately 3 more restaurants in the same county. Their conclusion is that food truck restrictions didn't maybe unnecessary and could be economically unproductive. We talked already about mobility restrictions. This is how often you have to move your vehicles. Those more on the side of food trucks are fine, say, hey, look, this is hurting their business model. It hurts customer base, visibility, retention of customers, especially if they can't come back after a certain number of days. Right now, state laws already resolved that for us, but in many places they haven't, other states haven't done that. Counterpoints are that, especially if you have heavily parked areas and food trucks are trying to, you eat at street parking or other types of parking areas, that could be a a reason to say, hey, you need to move your truck every so many hours. I think it's pretty clear that if we had a food truck causing a traffic, should we just write a traffic code and get the police out there? So we're not too worried about things like blocking sidewalks or crosswalks. We're gonna deal with that through the police. But other places that has been an ongoing problem, especially in bigger, larger metro areas where their street parking's at a premium, right? This was our research, and we showed this last time about what most cities are doing with mobility restrictions. And again, we're seeing it, really, it comes into sort of like a no overnight provision. Whether it's 8 to 6 or midnight to 6. Again, I think the outcome that they're focusing on is that these remain mobile. Some of the points, why should we even allow them at all? Well, community engagement, they seem to be highly popular. I think I've witnessed that post-recession, especially post-COVID, people really value getting out, being in the open, running into other people, and engaging with a lot of these different owners and businesses on a one-to-one level. However, they could be, in some situations, just counterproductive for neighborhood stability or for the peace and quiet of a certain area. I don't think we're really seeing that in Orem right now. Most of this is focused on commercial corridors, but that could be a consideration at some point. Do they economically help the vitality of the area? They do generate additional sales tax, permanence tax, boosting overall economic vitality. They attract crowds that could actually be a benefit for some brick and mortar businesses. This whole principle of like-minded businesses grouping together creates more traffic. So even close in, it may not be all such a bad thing for brick and mortar restaurant in the right circumstances. But the counter arguments are pretty much just the opposite of that. One of the, I think, the biggest advantages to allowing food trucks and trying to reduce regulations for them is business incubation. I really have a lot of counterpoints on this, which seems sort of like a win-win. Often food trucks are occupying economically unproductive spaces, vacant parking lots, streets that aren't used for parking, that don't generate a lot in the way of sales tax, property tax, or any other meaningful contribution to the city. And so this is a very affordable way for cities to allow for business incubation and growth. And we don't even have to get involved in it that much. It allows these businesses to test their markets, build customer base, and typically, always almost at a lower cost of trying to do those things in a much higher, riskier brick and mortar situation. These are 7 food trucks that I identified that originated in Utah Valley that have turned into brick and mortar restaurants. Craven's Bistro, Linden or Pleasant Grove. They just have 1 location. Red Tacos is now up to 3 or 4, and they're at University Mall. We still have a Sweeto Burrito here, and it's at 2000 North. Bring Me started out a food truck. They're not located too far up here on State Street. Fiora Pizza is not really brick and mortar yet, but they operate quite a large catering business now with 5 or 6 different trucks, and they're located in Orem. That's their home base. Waffle Love has expanded to 15 to 20 locations, and although not in Orem, right up near the border, Provo, and then Cup Off is actually up to 65 locations now. So this does have the possibility for additional food trucks to test out the market and grow these businesses into very meaningful businesses for many, many people to be employed and work out. So that's sort of the philosophical or policy reasons to discuss and think about as we discuss food truck regulations. Make sure I'm on time here. Last slide. Food parks is an interesting concept where this is a privately owned food park. It's in Holiday, Utah. It's actually, I baked in there one night on a sort of work activity. And it was a lot of fun, you know, it's quiet because all the food truck places have electricity. It's well maintained, there's seating, there's trash collection. And so this property owner did have to work with Holiday City to create and change some ordinances to allow this and make this happen. But it seems to be a pretty popular fixture in their city and has been a benefit, not just to the food trucks, but the community, creating this resource. So that is food trucks in 30 minutes. And a lot of materials for you that you can cruise in your own time. But that's, any questions before we move on?
Any questions for that this time?
Okay.
I had a couple actually,
Yeah.
because I've been like, because since we've talked about this, and I've been watching some of these spaces, I think there's still the issue of you can't regulate on private property, but kind of figuring out some of the stuff around there, like how permanent is somebody's food truck on somebody's private property. And then also, people who have like the snow cone shacks have to go through business licensing every year, get a temporary site plan. And I guess that's something to consider as we're talking through this, is kind of what is the difference?
Yeah. So under city law, we regulate them under a different statute. I have to look up what section that's in. Now, but it may do us well to compare that statute to state code now and say, okay, is our snow shack ordinance in compliance with state code regulations? We haven't done that yet.
They're also not mobile.
That's a good point. So that may be.
Well, are they, the difference is because they have, but most of them get pulled in during the year and then taken out, right? After the end of some
180 days.
180 days.
Yeah, so that's what our ordinance says, but you know, it wouldn't hurt for us to again review the state code and say, oh, is there anything we're missing in how we regulate the snow shacks
Well, I
that
think-
would find us being out of compliance.
Yeah, and I think it would be interesting to compare what that is to food trucks and just where they're able to locate and where some of the statutes around them, because some of them do, but you get site plans for them as opposed to just pulling up and being there. And that might help with some of the discussion about food parks too. And thinking about what does it mean to be kind of semi-permanent at a food park?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the holiday food park, they have to still leave every day. Yeah, I can double check on that, but they're not meant to be a permanent fixture, guys.
What about fruit stands like 800 South?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how far.
Yeah, well, one, they're not mobile at all for certain, because
What?
they come in, for certain they're not mobile because they come in, they set up pretty much the tent and that's there. And we do have a regulation on those as well, Cheryl approves those.
Those are also temporary site plans. Snow shacks, produce stands, fireworks stands, Christmas tree lots, those are all temporary site plans.
Cause I know by Zerkers, like there is the fruit stand, but then there'll be a rotating thing of food trucks that tend to hang out by them, and I understand why, but I'm just saying you see that kind of combo a lot too, so it might be worth looking at.
Is the prevalence of them even, or is it increasing or decreasing over the last few years?
The trucks?
Yeah, if we have any feel for it.
You know, I just have a feel. My feel is that they peaked about 5 years ago,
Yeah.
and there's probably a little less popularity now and less trucks out and about. But there's still a core contingency of trucks. I mean, if you go to even Wednesday, if you go just after planning commission, go over to the farmers market here tonight, you'll see. You know, there's, I think they have about 8 permanent, almost food trucks coming every week. So there's still, a lot of their business model now isn't just setting up random places. One thing like the food truck league helps them out substantially with is arranging catering gigs. So that's why you usually have a substantial increase of food trucks at weddings and birthdays and other corporate events. So, you know, they've expanded their business model way beyond just, hey, I'm gonna set up a random truck and sell food, to hosting a lot of events and such. But and again, that's just my guess, since maybe it's tapered off, but maybe it's just they've found other ways to generate business.
Any other questions?
About, if there's any like kind of nearby cities that are doing anything with, the seating areas. Obviously, I just
Yeah, just
go through it really quick. But it looks like, some of them don't, but in areas like Provo, and I know Provo kind of has a kind of busy mobile truck vendor scene. It looks like they have requirements, like you have to provide a trash can to make sure you can there's a place to throw your things. And it looks like they've got some stuff on all your seating areas have to be secured so they don't blow away. And that kind of seems to be that they're just pretty basic, like making sure your canopies aren't in public right of ways and they're in accordance with your setbacks. And that seems to kind of be what most of the cities are making sure you're in the setbacks. Some cities don't have anything about seating at all.
Yeah.
So
thanks for looking at that. Yeah. Hey, thank you for the information, and we will review this and come back to it. Have a more thorough discussion when we've. Okay. For the remaining few minutes, we'd like to take some time to have a discussion on priorities of the planning commission and things we'd like to discuss and talk about in these pre-meetings.
Just a one very quick intro to this discussion, if that's all right with you. So, internally, Gary, I, and Grant, and the rest of the team have talked about, what is it that we can proactively do to help you do your job? And so we just thought it'd be helpful to take 10 to 15 minutes today, and of course, this could be a bigger discussion down the road, but help us identify topics that you'd like us to bring to you that like in a similar manner, at least start educating and getting data and topics on the board that then you can then digest and then guide the remainder of that discussion. So these are about 5 different things that came to our mind at first. Really, this is the purpose of this, just to get the discussion going. But some of the things that came to our attention or mind was planning commission procedures. I know there's been some discussion about that. The general plan and neighborhood plans, housing policies, Southwest Orem development. It's one of our last large areas of greenfield development that could happen in the next 10 to 15 years or less. Geneva Road adjacent to Vineyard. They're growing like gangbusters out there. And so what do we envision that area to look like? Should it stay the same or should it be something different? And then, other priorities, and that's where I think where I'd like to turn it over to you.
Yeah, we had a discussion about this in March. I know we've had turnover in the planning commission, but just some of the topics we talked about then, again, just throwing out things we've discussed, is talking specifically related to transportation, is increased traffic and how to mitigate it. Street parking problems, updated biking and pedestrian plans, which is a subpart of the transportation plan, and e-bike regulation. We've also talked about that, that's related. There's some questions about illegal rentals and parking related to that. We've done that one. We've talked about specifically each of the zones and kind of what's involved. There's been some discussion about, do we want to discuss neighborhood meetings and who's attending those and if people want to attend those? That's one discussion that's been brought up. And then kind of general plan, I think kind of going off of this Southwest Orem development, I think it would be really nice to take some time to say, this is what the general plan says, this is what the map says. This is what is there now, this is what we're expecting, because it is a spot we keep coming back to. I almost say the same thing about that corner of Northeast Orem that we keep,
The opposite, yeah.
I mean, those lots have been up for sale, but we saw a few months ago and looks like they might have been sold, or under contract, so there's obviously stuff there, so ideas. Take a minute to think.
I'd like to know a little bit what the details surrounding the vineyard area developments look like. How much involvement is that between like collaboration with Vineyard City and how much of that is within our purview versus the city council itself?
Most of Geneva Road on the east side is Orem. And then pretty much about just west of the railroad tracks is Vineyard on the west side. Now that changes a little bit when we get down into 400 north. So everything from 400 north to 2000 north is sort of that situation. South of 400 north, it becomes increasingly Orem. There's a few little places where we touch. And then by the time we're down to University Parkway, or actually further north than that, we're completely Orem. So there, that's in reference to is pretty much that 400 north or Center Street to 2000 north area. Now, we mostly zone that light or it's light industrial. And no, again, it's one of the industrials. It's M1, M2. But you see just right across the street, there's all that commercial development, and housing and things going on. And so as you look at that corridor, a few years ago, we started to do some master planning for the area. We had funding to help us with that from the EPA. And so maybe it's an opportunity to revisit planning work that's happened to date. And is that the direction we still want to go? Is there opportunities for us to capitalize on what's happening in Vineyard through maybe in some areas industrial as well, not the right zoning anymore, and we should focus on more of a commercial orientation. So that's some of the questions that you can put up.
I think that's valid, and also discussing Utah City and what's
Yeah.
proposed with that and how that
Impact Orem.
will impact Orem and how we can,
Where will Utah City be? Is it-
Geneva, like north of
So
eight.
it's, so north of 800.
So if you go out, yeah, if you keep going out, eight north,
800 north, and how far east will
To
it
the
go?
lake,
like,
west of the lake,
West of what?
it'll be on the shore of the lake.
yeah, it's pretty much Geneva to the lake,
Okay,
So
north
the
of
railroad
East.
tracks to the lakes. So that whole square.
so the railroad tracks right are parallel Geneva Road all day.
Yes.
That location. So essentially from Geneva Road west, is that what
Yeah,
you're saying?
So,
Yeah.
sorry if I can interject, is Utah City a part of Vineyard or is it a separate?
It'll be the most confusing address in Utah.
It was.
Because Utah City is
Vineyard.
the postally Vineyard, so.
So it's a sub.
It's the stupidest name ever came up.
It really
It's kind of
is.
like Daybreak.
I've been more-
South Georgia.
I gotcha, thank you.
Or one in behind this.
Yes. So my question is, do we have existing relationships with Vineyard or are we just in a position of just reacting to whatever goes in?
So, you know, I'm friends with the community development director at Vineyard, but we don't meet regularly, you know, we meet on a as need basis, so. We're not coordinating plans or anything at this point, when we've updated the general plan, we've certainly looked at our adjacent neighbors and said, okay, what are they doing, does that affect our planning? But it's not a regular dialogue, right?
Was Utah City going to happen? Is it moving forward?
Yeah, there's been, the first subdivision plats have already been recorded. And infrastructure's going in, now again, I don't know how much of that's contingent upon. You know, their development plans contingent upon like pre-sales and, you know, pre-leasing and all, you know, so. Sometimes they get a quarter of the way down the road and then, you know, maybe the finances fizzle and then we get a bunch of paper lots. But they are on the path to making this happen.
So, yeah, I think it's something that we need to discuss further
Yeah.
within that context.
Yeah,
But bringing it back to other things, either off of what's on this list or concerns that you've seen around or that you'd
these
like.
are, everything that you had and all of these things are, all I think, all excellent.
Brad?
Could you expound on what housing policies
Yeah.
address in that particular poll?
Housing policies are going to take a step back and, you know, look at what is the current housing situation in Orem? What is projected population that would want to be here, whether or not we plan for that or not, or, you know, and then help, you know, basically gather information to help inform what anticipated needs are. And then from there, discuss, okay, say for instance, with the way that the county is growing, there's anticipation of, you know, and population increase of 20,000. Well, if the average household's 3,000, that's gonna be someplace around 6,500, sorry, 3 per unit. 6,500, so where do we, if we really want to accommodate 6,500 new units? Where would we do that? How would we do that? Or maybe the decision is, well, we recognize there's a demand for 6,500 units. But maybe we really wanna plan 2,000 units. And how does that play into other topics of the day, like housing affordability and traffic and. So that's what housing policies is, studying the issue of housing and then applying it to where you wanna see the direction of the city go.
And there are outside forces like the state, I guess, they're,
That would be a big part of it.
yeah,
If, when we talk about housing, we talk about state imposed requirements that they have, so we can understand the parameters in which we can operate. The state is already imposing a housing element, and you have to have a housing plan, and you have to report to the state on what you're doing, and every few years, they seem to ratchet up the requirements. It used to be, just have a housing plan, and then it was, we'll have a housing plan and report to the state what you're doing. And then it was, we'll have a housing plan, report to the state, and show us how you're doing on accomplishing.
and if you fail to do so, here are the penalties.
And then now they're starting to get into that aspect of it.
Yeah.
So that would be, I think, a good background for you to have, because we have a housing element that's due, is it every year now?
Our strategies for reporting on every year.
Yeah, so we have to report every year on our housing plan and what we're doing. So that would be good for the planning commission to know and understand how all of that works.
So how much can we really influence that as a Orem City Planning Commission? It sounds like we're in very much a reactive mode based on state code or, regulatory pressure or whatever the case might be. Seems like we don't have very much opportunity to be proactive in that area.
Well, we can be pretty proactive. And a lot of it will be, yes, if the state were tomorrow, and just to give you an example, in some states, not Utah, they have imposed requirements that you cannot anymore have just single family neighborhoods, an R1 zone. See, a detached single family home on a lot. You have to at least allow duplex. And there's nothing the cities can say against it. Now, if the state were to impose something like, okay, based on whatever criteria, you have to add 500 new units this next year. Well, then we would have to get together, if that's a state mandated requirement, figure out where are we gonna put 500 units. So one thing would be to help you understand what the state housing requirements are, what our population is, what the makeup of our city is. Home ownership, rental, single family, duplex, multiple family, large apartment complexes, to get a good sense for that, and then where we think the discussion in the state may be going. So if we do have to add housing, and one of the things that's a good thing for Orem, but also can be a thing that is a burden we're gonna have to struggle with, are like our front runner station and BRT stations. We now have state mandated requirements to do planning around those and looking at housing. So as housing issues come up, my guess is the state will only increase its regulation of it, or mandates to cities, rather than decrease it. So as part of our proactive planning, we probably ought to think about, well, if we do have to add units, where would it make sense to do it? And how does that combine with traffic? How does that combine with economic development? And where do we get revenue as a city? You know, we get it from property taxes, we get it from sales tax revenue. So that could be frankly a topic that we could meet together twice a month for several hours each time and just talk about the housing issues and needs that are out there and what a city can do and can't do.
Could that be like a work session that we do as a separate thing and just
Yeah,
say, we're gonna have a
sure.
work session, we're gonna set aside 2 hours and we're gonna
Yeah,
digest this, that may be for that kind of information, cause I think it is important for us to understand that. Because a lot of, we've been really where did the word go in my head? Reactionary to the state. And I think we have stuff presented us and understanding more in context what we're approving or not approving or discussing when a project comes before us, I think would be really valuable. And maybe having a concentrated time for that would be.
Yeah, and one of the things that we have talked about and are slowly but surely, you know, thinking about how could we go about this. If you look on the agenda tonight, everything is an administrative item. And we know when it's an administrative item, if it complies with our code, we have to approve it. Well, are there, you know, with planning commission's policies, could we take that burden from planning commission to have to deal with some of those things? And, let staff do it. Then that frees up more time for planning commission in your meeting. Not necessarily that there's an item that you're gonna pass a resolution on, but that you spend 3 hours one night really diving in detail into some of these issues. Rather than just a quick study meeting before you go approve a lot of administrative items that you have to approve, and there's no way around it.
Thank you. If you guys have more ideas, let me know, talk to me. I can talk to them, you can talk to them, we can just collect some more ideas.
I think you've done an excellent job in caption based on your notes. I'm impressed.
well, I think what we'd like to do is very quickly, and if that's just working with Madeline directly, or
Yeah.
if you want to pass feedback, Madeline, is prioritization too.
Okay.
Because we can't effectively talk about everything all at once.
Yeah.
I have a couple more thoughts, but then just the time on, approaching on the side.
Yeah, please do. I'm happy to talk after the meeting and collect that information. We just have 3 minutes, 2.5 minutes before our meeting, so we'll adjourn this and continue at our regular meeting. I need that slide you just turned out.
Oh,
Test.
Okay, I'm gonna call this meeting of the Orem City Planning Commission to order at 4:34 on September 4th, 2024 in the Orem City Council chambers. And we will begin with an invocation by Jim.
Our Father in heaven, as citizens of the community of Orem, we express our gratitude to meet this beautiful day and in such pleasant circumstances. We're grateful for our associations, one with another. We ask you to bless us that we will be wise in the decisions that we make. We will be considerate of one another. We pray that the proceedings of this meeting this day will be in accordance with thy will. We ask thee to bless those who reside here, that they will be blessed with joy in their lives, with peace, and that they will succeed in their efforts to improve in their individual lives. We humbly pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. Okay, we'll begin with item 3.1, which is a plat amendment vacating lot 3 and 4 of the Concord Plat A and approving the Concord Plat B located generally at 507 North, 400 West in the R 6.5 zone.
Okay, so for item 3.1, the applicant is requesting that the planning commission approve the vacation of lots 3 and 4 of the Concord. Currently, you can see there are the 4 lots. They came through to get a rezone a while back. And now they are wanting to combine the 2 highlighted lots back into 1. There is a home on the property currently that straddles the property line for the 2 properties that are highlighted. And they did not want to demolish the home, so they're just requesting to amend it back into 1 lot instead of 2. So here's the location. And the current plat, you can see the 4 parcels of land and the proposed plat. And this is the street view. Is there any questions?
Okay, is the applicant here? Would you like to say anything? If you do, you need to come to the mic. Thank you.
Do I start with like a joke or a anecdote? My name is Trace Miller. This is the property that we're trying to rezone. It made more sense to keep the house, and so we went forward and then backward. So I did it wrong, like horribly wrong. So it's really simple. We'd like to keep the house, and so we needed
To fix the lot.
Lego the lot back together. So
Okay.
yes, that's not an architecture term. Sorry.
So,
Right.
you're fine.
Oh, okay, good. I didn't know if I was supposed to do something else or
No.
beg or
Yeah.
so.
No, you're good.
Okay. I was going to ask you. I did a bond for it was tied to the house, and there was a sidewalk on the west side, some of that here. I didn't know if now that I'm not doing a bunch of work on half the stuff, could I petition for them to release half the bond? Is that possible?
That is an excellent question. You can speak with a member of the staff after they can answer your question.
Awesome.
Talk to
Okay.
Cheryl.
I know her.
Thanks. Okay. So would anyone, assuming there's no questions?
Oh, sorry.
You're good.
I'll,
You're good.
I'll motion to approve the planning.
Okay.
Motion to approve the vacation of lots 3 and 4 of the Concord Plat A and approving the Concord Plat B located generally at 507 North, 400 West in the R 6.5 zone.
Do I have a second?
I second that motion.
Okay. Britton moved and Jim seconded that we approve the plat amendment for Concord Plat B. Rod?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the plat amendment is approved. We'll move on to item 3.2. It's a preliminary plat approving the preliminary plat of Clayton Plat A located generally at 414 East, 1200 North in the R8 zone.
Okay, so for this one, the applicant is proposing to build a single-family home on the parcel. Currently, both parcels are lots of record and have the same address. And one of the lots does not have water or sewer connections, which is why they had to come through so they can get those stubbed in to build the home on the lot that is highlighted. So there's the location and the proposed plat and the street view.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. All right, any questions for staff? So it's two separate properties, but they've been one for a while.
Yeah, so they're just lots of records. So the one lot doesn't have water or sewer stubbed into it. So that's what they need to do and get a different address for that lot.
Okay. Does the applicant want to say anything? You good? Okay. All right. Would anyone like to make a motion? Oh, I thought Hasten was going to make a motion. Okay.
I'll move that the planning commission approve the preliminary plat of Clayton Plat, excuse me, A, located generally at 414 East, 1200 North in the R8 zone.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Rod moved Hasten second that we approve the preliminary plat for Clayton Plate A. Bridget, vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Okay, the preliminary plat is approved. Item 3.3, a plat amendment vacating lot 1 of Orlean Terrace Plat B and approving Orlean Terrace Plat H located generally at 1937 South Columbia Lane in the R 6.5 zone.
The applicant is proposing to subdivide an existing lot into two parcels. Currently, there is a home, as you can see on the south side of the parcel. And both lots would meet the zoning requirements of the R 6.5 zone. One lot will be 12,221 square feet and the other will be 12,104 square feet. So there's the location and the current plat and the proposed plat and the street view. Is there any questions?
That that brick wall on the far left, is that the property line or is that the far north end?
So I believe that's just the
Oh, it's just
far
the-
north end, just because that's north of the house and you can see the house here
Mhm.
and where it is on the
Mhm.
plat.
So that street view is only going to be the south end.
Yes, that's correct.
Gotcha.
Any additional questions? Is the applicant here and do you want to say anything? Are you good? Okay. Any questions further? We're good? Okay, well, let's move to motion. Somebody like to motion?
I move the planning commission approve the vacation of lot 1 of Orlean Terrace Plat B and approving Orlean Terrace Plat H located generally at 1937 South in the R 6.5 zone.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Jim moved, Mike seconded that we approve the plat amendment for Orlean Terrace Plat H. Okay, vote, Rod?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. The plat amendment is approved. We'll move on to item 3.4, which is also a plat amendment, approving the plat amendment of El Centro Plaza condominiums located generally at 867 North 900 West in the PD 22 zone.
Okay, so for this one, the applicant is proposing to adjust an office space lot line. Generally, these changes occur because of change of ownership of the actual office space. So it's all inside of the building. And this is the location and the current plat and the proposed plat.
So does one owner own that whole building or is it individual ownership by space?
It's a condominium.
Yeah, so it's individually owned.
Gotcha.
And this is the street view. It's inside of these buildings. east of Wingo.
Okay. Would the applicant like to come forward and probably answer that question?
Hi, my name's Paul Washburn. Office building, we have two tenants, both owner occupied, have adjoining units. One needs less space, the other needs more space. They've come to an agreement to shift the line dividing those two units. The building is sprinkled, utilities have all been set up so that it can be managed. Just need to make the adjustment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, then let's move to motion.
I motion that we approve the plat amendment of Hill Central Plaza condominiums located generally at 867 North, 900 West in the PD 22 zone.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, Mike moved, Jim seconded that we approve the plat amendment for El Centro Plaza condominiums. We'll go to vote.
Aye.
Britton?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Okay, the plat amendment is approved.
Can I motion we not use that font because the I
Yeah,
and the
but
L look the
I
same?
exactly the same. I was thinking the same thing.
Second?
All in favor? No. So we'll move on to item 4.1, approve the minutes for the August 21st, 2024 meeting. They seemed fine. Do I have any concerns? Yeah. No, somebody else needs a motion first.
I motion that we approve the minutes from the August 21st,
Okay.
2024 meeting.
Now you can second. Mike moved, Bridget seconded that we approve the meeting minutes for August 21st, 2024. Rod?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the meeting minutes are approved. Gary, do you have anything for us? It's now your turn. Okay,
No.
no, okay. Then would somebody like to motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn?
I second that motion.
Okay. Would you like to vote?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned at 4:46 PM.